Hi all, my name is Krutika and I'm a communication designer based in Mumbai, India. Currently, I am working as a UI UX designer, and in my free time, I love exploring type design, typography, and lettering. Thank you for joining in to listen to my talk about my first attempt at Gujarati type design. I hope you enjoy it. I would like to start off by telling you about why I wanted to do this project in the first place. So, I ethnically identify as a Gujarati, and growing up in a family with strong Gujarati roots and culture, there was a lot of emphasis to talk in Gujarati at home and to know how to read and write the script. I was surrounded by a lot of Gujarati literature at home in the form of newspapers, magazines, old recipe books, and novels. And hence, my culture and my mother tongue have had a big influence on my visual vocabulary. Now, the idea of doing a Gujarati typeface design project was born out of a strong wish to do something and create a piece of design that would combine my love for type design and my cultural identity. To begin with, I did not want to do this project in isolation, but I wanted to do this project under an experienced typeface designer's guidance who could provide me with the relevant tools and structure that I could follow. So I applied to the Alphabettes Mentorship Program in 2020, and through the program, I was matched with my mentor, Shuchita Grover, who is an experienced typeface designer and has worked with type foundries like Ektype and Typotech on multiple font design projects of Gurmukhi, Kannada, and Oriya scripts. Diving into the project work, the first set of exercises were focused on research and critical thinking. My mentor's approach to learning about type design emphasized a lot on research, reading, and understanding the history of the script. I started out by looking at the Gujarati script and its characters, doing a visual analysis of my own, and creating my own anatomy chart. I also referenced the Devanagari script anatomy because there is much more extensive research done in that, and it is like a sister script to Gujarati. I then worked on an exercise on grouping systems and group letters which had similar features. So, this exercise would later help me maintain consistency in similar characters during the design phase. Then came the font analysis exercises, where I took a few existing typefaces from different foundries and marked my observations regarding the style, the characteristics of the letters, and other design elements. My mentor and I would have multiple discussions after each of these exercises, and through that, my understanding of the script grew a lot. The next exercise was calligraphy, and the objective of learning calligraphy was to understand the writing system better, the structure and the movement of the letters. I got to try some traditional instruments like these bamboo reed pens and actually handcraft the nib myself. The goal was not to perfect my calligraphy skills, but was more focused on making observations like how the letters are shaped and where the weight falls. And through the design phase, I continuously referred back to these calligraphed letters to understand the form structure better. As we got to the design phase, the intent was to take an exploratory approach and build a design style for the typeface from scratch. And for this, my mentor had set up a set of exercises that would help me understand the process of exploring different styles and forms and also give us a library of options to pick from. So, as a starting point, I did a fun exercise on letter exploration where I picked the letter fur and drew its skeleton in different stylistic variations, playing with all factors of form and structure. Some of the variations were super abstract and some were very conventional. Here, the goal was to understand how the same letter could be shaped in a lot of different ways than what we are already familiar with. The idea was to open up my mind and break away from the conventional form of the letter and to keep drawing it in ways that I wouldn't have anticipated in the beginning. So the range of the variation was not defined, but there was an underlying idea to at least make sure that the letter was still recognizable as a f. Then I shortlisted a few styles and tried to replicate them to another set of unique letters that had different characteristic features. It was important to see how the same style would expand across more letters of the script. And here again, I was drawing the style in a monolinear format to focus on achieving the stylistic characteristics of the form first. Then I started adding and transforming these skeletons of a few styles into flesh explorations. And here, with the same style, I could create multiple variations of flesh forms by adding weight to the skeleton in different ways. Here, the calligraphy practice helped a lot to gauge where I could add more weight to the character and make it look visually appealing. Of all the explorations I did, the italic style was my favorite. So I decided to take that forward and started drawing different variations of the characters. Since I was drawing the style digitally, I played around with the contrast and weight, the angle of the slant, and some details like contours and ink traps. At this stage into the project, it was important to define a brief for the typeface by stating some characteristic features that would set a design direction for all the letter forms. So I wanted to design a display typeface with high contrast and a slant angle, almost making it look like, italics Gujarati typeface with thin, narrow counters and a bold and heavy feel. And for that, I also wanted to try tightly spacing it. When I started drawing the characters, I drew variations of forms and not just one version of each, which would then allow me to pick one that works well with the style defined and which works well together as a family. Here you can see all the variations of the letters J, K, and Th, and how each variation is significantly different from the other one. And that's another realization I've had, that more often than not, even the initial form that you start off with can change with time to suit the whole family. Here is a glimpse of all the base character glyphs along with their variations, and I would say that this set is still evolving with refinement. Some of the prominent features I want to highlight here are one, the use of two kinds of knots, one with counters and the others without. And the second, character width. Since the general character width of this style was turning out to be broad and wide, I had to make sure that all characters looked like they were following that same pattern of being wide enough and that the width of each character was proportionately set in comparison to the others. Again, here the continuous focus of drawing all the characters was to make all of them visually look like they belong to the same stylistic family. Then I went on to doing the spacing, where I had started on with a loose spacing and then moved to create a version of the file with tight spacing. And since it's a display typeface, I could play with the extremity of tight spacing and see how close I wanted the letters to be. Then I got on to drawing form variations of matras, which are vowel signs, and there are quite a few in Gujarati. So I manually drew multiple forms of each matra on a transparent sheet of paper and then placed it on a single letter. The challenge here was to adhere to the slant style and fit the family, but also not compromise on the form of the matra. I then moved on to drawing them digitally and testing variations of each matra on different sets of letters. Here, apart from deciding on the form of the matra, I had to make a decision of whether the matras would connect to the letter form or not, because both ways are acceptable in Gujarati. Both have been explored in the past. When I started testing matras in words like this one here, Purushat, which uses two matras consequently, I realized that wider characters may need wider matras and narrow characters would need narrower matras. So I would have to draw two or more sets of variations of each matra. This is something I didn't anticipate at the beginning of the design phase, but it is interesting to see how such situations can also arise as the process evolves. While so far I was designing this typeface in isolation with my mentor, it was evidently important for me to start testing it with native readers for further refinements and design decisions. Getting some fresh set of eyes is a helpful practice because sometimes when designing in isolation, we tend to get saturated with the visual elements and ignore some things which might be very prominent to the native readers of the script. Another reason to do this exercise is to test factors like legibility and comfort of readability with different groups of native readers and to understand their preferences when it comes to seeing Gujarati set in a particular typeface. At the end of the day, my mentor was not a native reader of the script, so she could only provide me with design feedback and help me through the design process. But a native reader, a daily reader of Gujarati, could provide me with insights on common practices and patterns that are being followed when a piece of text is set in Gujarati and what is comfortable for them to read. Next, to expand the character set, I went on to drawing the Gujarati numbers from 0 to 9. After the basic set of characters, matras, and numbers were done, I started setting more and more words and created a specimen like this to test small phrases and words and formats which use numbers to explore how the typeface would look in use. As this is a display typeface, it would only be appropriate to use it in short phrases and header situations. Digging into understanding how the typeface would look in use across different touch points, I started creating mock-ups of real life application examples of the typeface. Like here, I've used the typeface to in a newspaper header of Divya Bhaskar. And here I've mocked it up in a packaging label for a honey brand. And since it's Navratri season soon, I thought of making an album art for Garba songs, which is a form of Gujarati dance that is performed during the festival. And also to add that, the typeface in general has an essence of movement in it because of its slant angle. I thought it would fit well on a Gujarati bilingual movie poster of Speed. During the course of this project, and even today, I try to experiment and test the design with other technologies like 3D modeling and variable font technology. And this one here is an exercise I did on the character per and created a variable axis on the stem width. Lastly, when I took on this project, I also took up the task of documenting my process and uploading it to my blog for fellow type design enthusiasts like me who could have a second-hand experience of the process. The blog can be found on my personal website, which is www.kritikashah.com. I would like to conclude my presentation by thanking everyone who has helped me achieve what I have so far with this project. I am super grateful to the Alphabettes Mentorship Program for connecting me with my mentor, Shuchita, without whom this project would not be what it is today. And I really appreciate all the time, effort, and patience she has shown throughout the process with me. And lastly, I would like to thank the Type Weekend team for providing me with the opportunity of sharing my work on a platform like theirs. Um, it has been a wonderful experience, and I hope the audience enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.